This is Autoline Daily, a show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Tesla owners may not like the fact that Elon Musk is opening up the Supercharger network to any EV, but it sure will generate a lot of money for the company. Bloomberg NEF estimates that last year those Superchargers generated $1.7 billion in revenue, and it's forecasting that Tesla could earn $7.4 billion in revenue from its Supercharger network by 2030 and $740 million in profits, meaning they'll have a 10% profit margin. Globally, Bloomberg says revenue for all public charging stations will reach $127 billion by 2030. Plug-in hybrid vehicles are seen as a good transition to fully electric, but a new study from Europe shows they emit way more emissions in the real world than they do in testing. The European Commission says PHEVs emit 350% more CO2 emissions in the real world than their WLTP tests. And that's because drivers don't charge or drive their vehicles on battery power as frequently as they figured. The data came from onboard monitors equipped in 600,000 vehicles that was gathered in 2021. Onboard monitors, which record fuel consumption and distance driven, have been mandatory since 2021 in all EU vehicles that run on liquid fuels. But researchers say they can't come to firm conclusions yet because the data is self-reported by automakers and there was a wide gap in reporting. Jaguar Land Rover was the best and sent data from 43% of its fleet, but most automakers sent 5% or less. New car sales in China got off to a shaky start in the first 2 months of the year, but in March they came roaring back. For the first quarter of the year, automakers in China sold 6.7 million vehicles, up more than 10% compared to the first 3 months of last year. First quarter sales of new energy vehicles, which includes BEVs and PHEVs, surpassed 2 million units, up nearly 32%, and they now have 31% market share. Exports were also up strong, with 1.3 million vehicles shipped overseas, up 33% from a year ago. Last year, China became the world's largest exporter of vehicles. And naturally, that has the rest of the world's automakers very worried. And they're not just worried about Chinese exports. They're also worried about Chinese automakers building assembly plants in other countries, especially in Europe. The Italian government is in talks with Chery to make cars in Italy, and Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares warns that if that happens, Stellantis will have to close assembly plants there. Quote, "We're ready to battle," Reuters quotes him as saying, "but in a battle there will be casualties," end quote. He may get lucky because it looks like Chery is going to Spain, but it could always expand or another Chinese automaker could swoop in. Alfa Romeo took the wraps off a new compact crossover called the Milano. It's offered as a hybrid or a BEV, and it's the first fully electric model from the brand. The electric features a 54 kilowatt-hour battery pack and 2 power outputs, 156 horsepower or 240. It has a range of 410 kilometers or 254 miles based on the WLTP test cycle. The hybrid's powertrain features a 1.2-liter 3-cylinder engine combined with a 48-volt lithium-ion battery pack, a 21-kilowatt electric motor, and a 6-speed dual-clutch transmission. That setup produces 136 horsepower. Besides the Milano being Alfa's first electric model, it's also the first Alfa to be produced outside of Italy since the company's founding in 1910. The model will be built in Poland alongside the Fiat 600 and Jeep Avenger, which are also part of the Stellantis group. The decision to build the Milano in Poland isn't a popular one in Italy, but Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares defended the decision by saying it would have had to charge 10,000 euros more if it was made in Italy instead of Poland.
Intrepid's NeoVi Pi, allowing automotive engineers to interface, capture, and monitor vehicle data using Raspberry Pi. As a matter of fact, it's the automotive industry's first robust platform for Raspberry Pi, featuring Intrepid CAN-FD technology and Raspberry Pi Compute Module. The NeoVi Pi is designed for automotive environments, allowing use with relative power ranges and applications. In addition, the NeoVi Pi enables you to use the Raspberry Pi for compute while avoiding additional development to adapt to network environments. That makes the NeoVi Pi powerful enough to solve your vehicle network problems, yet small enough to fit in your backpack. One of many intrepid tools used for developing zonal architecture and software-defined vehicles.
GM and its joint venture partners saw their sales dip 4.6% in China in the first quarter of the year, but their sales of new energy vehicles, or NEVs, were up over 42% to 128,000 vehicles. One of the top sellers is the Wuling Starlight, a small plug-in hybrid sedan with a starting price around $12,500. And now it's getting an EV version as well, which should help boost sales even more. It comes standard with a 100 kilowatt or 134 horsepower electric motor, and there's the option for a roughly 42 or 54 kilowatt hour LFP or lithium iron phosphate battery pack. While similar in most other ways to the plug-in, the EV also gets its own unique front fascia. With a starting price of just over $15,000, we think it's easy to see why the Wuling brand is so popular with customers. In the first quarter in China, GM and its partners sold a little over 441,000 vehicles, but Wuling alone accounted for nearly 281,000 of those sales. If you live in the US and are getting ready to buy a new car, maybe you better check with your insurance company first. That's because insurance rates are going up fast. They're up more than 22% from a year ago, which is well above the inflation rate of 3.5%. Insurance now accounts for about 1/4 of the cost of owning a car. The average rate across the country has risen to $182 a month or $2,184 a year. One reason it's going up so much is that there's an increase in storm damage as more extreme weather is becoming increasingly common. Another reason is that cars have more complicated technology that costs more to repair, and a shortage of car techs doesn't help either. Now brace yourselves. As bad as this sounds, the insurance shopping website Insurify predicts rates will go up at least another 7% this year. Diesel owners either like to or have to drive more than other American drivers. According to Energy.gov's 2022 National Household Travel Survey, the average diesel vehicle drove 17,500 miles in 2022. And these are household miles, so we're not talking about big semi-trucks. In a somewhat surprising second place is plug-in hybrids at just over 16,000 miles. And even regular hybrids beat out gas cars, which average 14,100 miles. But less surprising is that EVs are at the back of the pack with an average of 12,400 miles. Obviously, the market sizes for these vehicles are widely different, but it's interesting to see the differences. We're guessing that since most of the diesels are probably in pickup trucks, they're traveling long distances to get to that weekend cabin or hauling stuff for work. But what's your guess for why PHEV owners are driving so much? Kia teased that it's going to launch its first ever pickup truck next year called the Tasman. It says it's a C-segment sized truck, which we guess would put it around the size of the Hyundai Santa Cruz. Kia calls it a lifestyle truck like the Santa Cruz, but we bet it's more rugged looking. It says the name is inspired by the island Tasmania and is meant to, quote, evoke a spirit of adventure and exploration. The Tasman will also be sold in markets like Korea, Australia, Africa, and the Middle East, where traditional styled pickups are much more popular. Say, what's happening with that $25,000 car Tesla was supposed to come out with? And that small $25,000 EV that Ford is working on? Is that really a good idea? Do Americans really want a small car? And could Toyota blindside everyone by coming out with a killer EV as revolutionary as the first Prius? Those are some of the topics that are lined up for Autoline After Hours this afternoon. We have Bob Gritzinger from Ward's and Daron Levine, a host on Sirius XM, joining John and Gary. And we think you're really going to enjoy this show. which you can find on the Autoline website or our YouTube channel. But that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks for making Autoline Daily a part of your day.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering, boost your game. And by Teijin Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility.
At Teijin Automotive Technologies, we combine world-class composite materials expertise with cutting-edge designs because, frankly, there are better ways to lightweight vehicles. So lighten up with Teijin Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility.
When the peace and quiet of your morning commute is as comforting as your morning macchiato, that's what really matters. Bridgestone Turanza EV tires. Less noise for more quiet comfort.